Hello everyone, it's Eric. Thank you for 4,000 subscribers. Today, I am celebrating by doing a ranking of my favorite rap battle series, PowerPoint Rap Battles or PPRB. Starting in 2022, this series gained renown for its strange but endearing video style, since all of the videos are edited in PowerPoint. However, most of the 27 current PPRBs are kinda messy, and they don't really hold up that well. But the last 10 battles are, in my opinion, the best ones, and all at least pretty good. To end this year, I am going to rank my 10 favorite PPRBs thus far, talking about the aspects I like and dislike the most, as well as giving a little bit of behind the scenes knowledge for each battle. Let's begin. Number 10 is the Pigeon versus the bird that carries you over a disproportionately small gap. This is one of my most recent battles, and it dabbles in Undertale / Deltarune, a franchise I had not really looked into before and haven't thought about much since. I promise that'll change next year. This matchup actually came about in early March, and it was because my brother got into Undertale, and he introduced me to the bird. I love the bird's full name, and the theme is a beautiful song. It was at that moment, I became hooked on doing a battle with that bird. My good friend Ashley Magica suggested the Pigeon as an opponent, and my other good friend Rosenthal seconded it. The rest is history. I think the things I like most in this battle are the writing and the video. For those who don't know, the Pigeon books are all about the titular character asking the reader to let him do something he's not allowed to do. For that reason, I felt like a Pigeon battle had to incorporate the fourth wall breaking from the book. So I wrote most of the first verse to be about the Pigeon asking to battle the bird, and thus involving the viewers. The joke I like most is when the Pigeon sets up a rhyme that would be completed by the viewers saying yes, and agreeing with him, but they say no instead. However, I think there are a lot of other good punchlines in this one besides that. My overall favorite is the closer, "I'll drop you off with all the other passenger pigeons." It's a double meaning because the passenger pigeon is a bird species that infamously went from 3 billion individuals to extinct in under a century. And also the pigeon wants to drive a bus in the first book, so that's a whole thing. And this was the first line I came up with. It's the one that truly made me realize I wanted to do this matchup. In terms of the video, Hazel Moth really nailed the art style for the pigeon and the additional characters like the PPRB narrator. I was really happy to work with her on her first rap battle art job. I did struggle with keeping the text readable when it was in speech bubbles that were moving around, but I am proud of what I pulled off. It was also fun to have two distinct video styles because the pigeon is straight from its source material, and the bird is more straight from its source material, being more 16-bit and all that. I made a pigeon sprite to match with the bird sprites, and while it's quite inconsistent, I had fun making that. Then there's the buff bird art that Luke Reardon did. His work is just fantastic. I just had a lot of fun with the video as a whole, and there was a pretty good idea of what each scene was going to look like, which helps make this one of the better videos in the top 10. The one thing holding down this battle is the audio, namely the beats. It's not a bad sound, but it lacks variation and doesn't really fit Undertale that well. I was considering getting some added instruments for the bird side, but I just never followed through with that. Still, I like listening back to this one, and some of the more out there ideas are well executed. It most certainly earned a top 10 spot. Number 9 is Aladdin vs Guanom. This is not my most polished finished product, but it had one heck of a production. I randomly came up with this matchup sometime in April 2024, and I think I wrote the whole thing in the following 3 days. I was super happy with it. The diamond in the rough scheme might still be among my favorite things I've written to this day. And in general, the rhyme schemes are a lot more creative than things I'd done before, and that I've done since. But I think they turned out quite nicely. It was also the first battle besides Nuclear Man vs Condiment King to have a full storyboard made for the video. I really knew exactly what I wanted it to look like, and all of the art was drawn to match that vision, so it's definitely among my favorite non-live action videos I've done. The one issue with this battle is that the flow can be wonky at parts. It took me a while to cast the battle, hence why this battle took 10 months to finish. The 2 voice actors I ended up getting had never rapped before, and my script was not flawless, so it definitely wasn't easy for them to pull off. But man, I think their work is really solid, and I love both of the voices they gave. This battle could have been catchier, but I think it warrants a higher view count than, I don't know, my terrible Llamas with Hats battle? I'd call this one underrated, which might seem weird to say because it's my own battle, but I stand by it. Number 8 is Mr. Peabody vs Talk. This battle was a big, creative, and ambitious project for me. So much about it was very different from what I'd done in the past, and it was fueled by a desire to truly improve at battle making. I wrote it in December 2023 and January 2024, so back when Mr. Six vs. Cat in the Hat came out. Quite a while ago. There was a big focus on rhyme schemes, and I think some of them, especially in Talk's first verse, still hold up alright. However, the writing style did come at the price of memorable bars. Save for the closer and "they race against time from a time against race," few lines seem to stick with many people. Overall, while I think the writing is a notable improvement from most of what came before it, I hadn't quite gotten the hang of making the punchlines really land. As a result, this is in my bottom 2 for writing of the battles in the top 10. As for the audio, that's what took longest to put together because there were so many rappers. I had 8 people rapping in this one, and they all did a good job. I don't think any of the performances are standouts for my series as a whole due to the general lack of direction I gave besides maybe talk, but they all did the best they could with what I gave them. The writing and directing definitely fell a bit short here, but there are 2 elements I love so much, and they ensured this battle made it above 9th place. Those are the beat and the video. This beat is my single favorite in the series so far. It's by Tone Jones and he's amazing. I was a really big fan of the synth in this beat because it reminded me of the sounds that Mr. Peabody's Time Machine makes, and it's such a beautiful beat as a whole. It was the first time I ever did a beat arrangement on my own, moving around the synths, setting up a contrast between the 2 rappers, and adding the ticking sound in Talk's verses. This was not perfect, and the brilliant audio engineer Glitch Dude polished it up a little, but I was proud to try something new, and I stand by this being the best PPRB beat. As for the video, this wasn't fully storyboarded, but that might have been for the better, because the spontaneous transitions I came up with for a lot of the scenes are so fun to watch in my eyes. Still, the artists do the heavy lifting here. BMB did all of the Phantom Tollbooth art on the Talk side, Thripple did the Peabody and Sherman stills, and Luke Reardon did the rest of the assets for the Peabody side. It's all so cool, and by far the most art I've gotten for a single battle thus far. The other big perk for this battle is how fans of the Phantom Tollbooth really loved it. That meant a lot to me, and it made me feel like my creative ideas paid off, even if some of the things people now love about my battles aren't quite there. This one's not perfect, but I'm so happy it exists. Number 7 is Nuclear Man vs. the Condiment King. Here it is, my first good battle. It's my most popular battle, and for many of you, it's probably your favorite. I know this one has some serious fans, so let's talk about the most important aspect, the video. This is maybe my only battle where the video is truly the highlight. For me, it's definitely the only one, but I do love the visuals here. The idea of doing live action nagged at me since I began making battles, and in November 2023, I decided to do this matchup for no reason. I'd never seen Condiment King's episode from Batman the Animated Series, and it had been many years since I even thought about Superman 4. However, this just seemed like a good fit for the style, because the costumes would be fun, and editing in PowerPoint would work fine for a wacky villain from serious media, and a serious villain from wacky media. So during the writing phase of Peabody vs. Talk, I was working on my first storyboard ever. I thought it was pretty awesome. Skip ahead to March 2024, I did Discord calls with Pixel Chris and Raccoon Bro VA to body act for Condiment King and Nuclear Man respectively. This was of course after assembling the costumes, and while I picked out the items, both of them had to do some notable work on their own, and they killed it. Pixel Chris made the Condiment King logo from scratch. I recall Raccoon Bro VA having a camera person with him ready to film video, and I realized at that point, I'd never explained that I was using photos. That was a little embarrassing, and I could have just used the videos, but in the end, I got lots of high quality pictures. The 2 calls were a combined 6 hours, and Condiment King was done a week before the planned release date of April Fool's Day. Having a storyboard really helps here, as editing moved quite quickly and the whole thing was done in time. Alright, so that's some backstory, and in the end, we had a ton of funny visuals and everybody loved the style. The elevator sequence is my favorite part, and the face that Chris made was just perfect when Nuclear Man broke out. I also find Raccoon Bro VA's Nuclear Man vocals particularly great, especially the rahs. Matt Righteous's Condiment King is also a very fun voice. He nailed some of the weirder rhyme schemes like the whole condiments aren't compliments part. Speaking of which, that writing is why I can't rank this any higher. If this is your favorite, I get it. But writing is truly what I care about most in a battle, and I think this is the weakest in the top 10 in that regard. Some jokes like Powerful God of the Sun like Ra are still pretty funny, and I think there are a good amount of decent puns here, but my writing has gotten much cleaner since this battle. The condiment scheme is fun, and it's aided by the visuals, but realistically it's lacking in substance. If the script had more sauce, this could be top 5, but it warms my heart knowing it's a favorite of so many anyway. This battle even has an edit made of it, with every word that starts with a C on the Condiment King side. Check it out. All in all, I don't think everything about this is my best, but it was my first really good project, and it means a lot to me for that. Number 6 is Mojo Jojo vs Feathers McGraw. This one is tough to rank. On one hand, I had found my groove once I started working on this one, and I think there's some serious highlights. On the other hand, I think it has less of note than other battles above it, so I couldn't quite put it too high. I opted to do this battle after watching Wallace and Gromit The Wrong Trousers and thinking a Feathers battle would be funny. I settled on Mojo Jojo for the opponent because of the interesting contrast in their manners of speaking. As a result, I leaned all the way into characterization on this one. Maybe too much. The problem with this battle is that it's a master of one as opposed to a jack of all trades. Mojo's whole first verse and 4 lines of the second verse are based around one joke. If you don't remember, the idea is that Mojo really thinks Feathers is a chicken because of the glove on his head being a disguise. So his plan is to beat him in the rap, then hand him over to the authorities. But when the glove comes off, Mojo rants about the fact that his second verse was based on Feathers being a chicken, and he rushes to change it, ending with the solid line, "You have very little material, like your studio." I know it's a lengthy explanation, but that's because this one concept takes up basically a third of the battle, and I think it's very successful. It's in character for Mojo, an homage to Wrong Trousers, the time skip card is funny, the clips from the show synced up beautifully, and I think it's one of my best executed ideas ever. However, it's by far the peak of the battle, and the rest of it just isn't as good as those above it in my opinion. There's still some writing I especially enjoy. Mojo staying in character by being repetitive only to diss Feathers for the same thing is fun. For Feathers, the flows are smooth and there are a handful of great lines, such as "I suggest you call the hotline but you're beyond saving," and "I'm worth 1,000 pounds, you've taken several thousand poundings." Even the one where he just brags about not having a soul is pretty good. These lines are all brought to life, or rather, lifelessness, by Little Flex, who I had been wanting to work with since I used Sir Topham Hatt. His performance is pretty fantastic, with the great rapping he's known for over on Freshie Canal, and a somewhat unique voice for him. It has the quiet charisma of his Patrick Bateman, while also being British and slightly nasal to be more bird-like. It's pretty awesome. It was also great to work with Matt Righteous again for the voice of Mojo. I feel the casting was probably the best picks I could have gotten. To conclude, I love this project and its writing is not bad as a whole, but some parts significantly overshadow others, so it's not as consistent as the top 5. Number 5 is Morshu vs the Cabbage Merchant, my latest battle, and quite a popular one. It got over 12,000 views in the first week, which is close to double the second best. This one came together very quickly. I wrote it in very late September and early October, and it came out in November. There wasn't too much to it. I wrote it, I made the demo, the VAs recorded 2 or 3 weeks later, I edited the video in 3 or 4 days, and the rest of post-production was pretty breezy. Despite all that, I think it's among my best projects. There's nothing super ambitious, it's just a fundamentally strong and enjoyable battle, and sometimes that's all you need. I think the majority of the punchlines here are quite great, and among my best examples of getting disses out of characters with little material. My personal favorites include Morshu's "While Mine Protected Korodai, Yours Almost Like Korodai," and the Cabbage Merchant's closer, "The guy who had to do your voice that you were so pathetic that he utilized your methods by refusing to take credit." Fun fact, I came up with the Korodai one at a wedding where my chair fell backward because a leg snapped. I was fine. And honestly, happier than ever after coming up with that line. I also feel like I rose to the challenge of incorporating Morshu's 2 lines into the lyrics in creative ways. For example, him saying "That's a pretty sorry Link" was a fun way to sneak in "Sorry Link." Even the closer, which does just outright say "You want it, it's yours," is aided by the "scrubbing the floors" rhyme, and giving a bit of a different meaning to "you want it," because it's rhetorical. I really love this writing. I also love the performances. Morshu's a hard voice for 20-somethings to pull off because it's so deep, but Hazel Moth did an excellent job and delivered every line the way I imagined it. Just the delivery of "but your fans have dug deeper" boosts that line so much. Then we have Snakebite126 going so crazy with this one. It's one of his most energetic performances maybe ever, and I love the contrast it establishes between Cabbage and Morshu. The art is also excellent. Shout out to Wayne in particular because this is his 3rd time doing Morshu, after doing his own battle, and then doing a brief appearance in Aladdin vs. Guanom. 3rd time is certainly the charm, as this art is glorious. That's all I have to say. Everything about this one came together so well. It's simple yet effective, and I'm happy it's reached a lot of new viewers. Number 4 is Slope Dude versus the Abominable Snowman, my 20th battle, which I released on my 20th birthday. This one is a very similar story to Morshu vs. Cabbage Merchant. It was also completed in just over a month. Fun fact, the story of this matchup is that I wanted to use Slope Dude and thought Abominable Snowman would make this a good matchup for Halloween, because he's a cryptid. In the end, I opted to not release it on Halloween, but instead release it on my birthday a few days earlier. In the end, even though this project is a year older than Morshu, I like it even more. If there's one thing I definitely prefer in Slope Dude, it's the video. Morshu's is fine, but there are less creative ideas in general, whereas Slope Dude has the chalkboard scene, the drug test part, and more interesting location changes that I think came out pretty cool. I will also take this opportunity to shout out Valenide, the artist for Slope Dude, who's done a good amount of work for my series since starting with Emmett Brakowski. Slope Dude's a weird character to draw because of the original design, but she made him look super sick. As for the writing and audio, it's kind of a toss-up for me between this and Morshu. Luke Reardon's performance is fantastic, and certainly on par with many of the best performances in my series. Then there's me as Slope Dude. I might have more fun with this audio because I voiced in it, even if my performance has some weak moments. It was just a blast to record the demo knowing these vocals would be in the final cut. I love a lot of the moments in my performance, and certainly a lot of that is the result of the writing. The script is more uneven than Morshu, some lines are a little harder to understand, but there are so many jokes here I still love looking back on and think hold up well. The fact that these two rappers have no actual character means I went off the handle with non-stop skiing and math puns like, any song you release is an imaginary number, I know around the globe you're not even cross-country, and the utterly ridiculous, you would hope there's a curve on my test since your story's less straight than the guy who climbed Everest. There are some lines that make actually no sense, like, I'm gonna list a couple of your negatives, nice, but I still love them. I'm so happy with this writing and I feel like I had found my groove by this point. I enjoy going back to this battle more than any other game thus far. Even if it's not perfect, it's still got the 4th place spot. Alright, it's time to enter the Big 3, a trio of battles I think stand above the rest. Morshu, Slope Dude, Mojo are all very good, but these top 3 are without a doubt my S tier projects as of now. Let's start with the bronze medal. Number 3 is Larry the Lobster vs. Mr. Poolcheck. My first battle of 2025, you can make a case for this being my best writing. It's chock full of strong punchlines and is also more consistent than Slope Dude, maintaining some of these strong character moments that make Mojo stand out as well. I was writing this in November 2024, which is funny because it was so cold outside, and this battle is very strong energy of the summer. In the end, I feel this came out as one of my most cohesive and well-rounded battles, but the writing is the highlight. Jokes like, you need to CPR and I'm gonna have to wait for an hour cause I just ate, are way up there as some of my very favorite lines. Poolcheck also has strong jokes, and the aggression he displays I feel really shows that all the disses are in the name of the pool that he cares about. My favorite line on his side is probably, you're throwing off the balance of this place because you're so basic. There's not a single weak line in this battle in my eyes, but I think Larry verse 2 is a top 3 verse in my series. The reasons go beyond the writing. Bel Benico was borderline perfect as Larry, delivering everything so well. This verse also has the guitar riff in the beat that I especially enjoyed. I arranged this beat quite a bit, and it is my favorite arrangement thus far. Getting the beat to nearly cut out for a moment before Poolcheck rapped was a challenge for someone who knows nothing about beats, but I enjoyed doing that here. I do really think the beat fits the vibe as well. It's perfect for sounding what I wanted it to, and also the guitar riff's just awesome. I actually bought this beat the same day Slope Dude dropped as a present to myself, and it's the best birthday gift I got that day. Since we're in the top 3, I have to make sure I mention the other people who worked on this battle and made it what it is. Eric the Audible voiced Mr. Poolcheck, and I was actually going to get chaotic rap battles originally. Ashley Magica had pitched the idea, and I loved the audition Garrett gave with the yelling parts especially. He did sadly have to drop out, but Eric the Audible ended up being a pretty perfect voice match, and it was great to work with another Eric. And then there's the art. Thribble did the Larry art and replicated the SpongeBob style super well. I don't think he had done that style before, but he killed it anyway. Then Valenide did Poolcheck, and all of that art is great. But the best is the close-up that she added detail to, similar to a SpongeBob style close-up. That was her idea, and it was brilliant. Also, she said in a live stream chat that this is the most stills she did for an individual character at that point, which is just hilarious. Everything about this battle works, resulting in an even more fun project than the rest of the ones I've discussed thus far. Number 2 is Miss Frizzle vs. Mary Poppins. In my opinion, This battle represents a major change in PPRB. Following the release of Nuclear Man, I had very little in the works for a while. Just Peabody, Aladdin, and another battle that's not out yet and maybe never will be. Come July, I decided to pursue this matchup that I've been thinking about for a while. It just seemed like the perfect matchup. The problem was that I had not really seen much of either character in years. So naturally, I watched the film Mary Poppins for the first time and rewatched the Magic School Bus. Then, I really wrote a battle with the goal of not only writing good lines, but writing them in a way that could easily appeal to a casual viewer. This was the first time I'd really done that, but I did things like speaking the line out loud to make sure it sounded like a normal sentence, and writing setups that made sure the meaning of the final diss was not lost on people. I also just had some crazy brain blasts, like Nooks and Crannies' Crooked Nanny, and Lightning Strikes the Highest Object. The former was the first line I came up with, and like with the Passenger Pigeon line, it was the moment I decided I was totally doing the battle. Frizzle verse 1 has the two aforementioned lines that I mentioned, and as a result, it's right up there with Larry the Lobster verse 2 in my top 3 verses of all time. As a result of the improved writing, this battle ended up being by far my favorite I'd done at the time. But it doesn't stop with the script. The writing's far from the only highlight, and for many, it's second to the performances. I did not know how to cast this battle, but things really came together quickly when I told Langle about the project. This was long before I wrote the Pigeon battle, but I was working with her for another battle that will hopefully release next year, we'll see. When Langle heard about the project, I had already confirmed King Spirals as Mary Poppins, an idea given by Ashley Magica, and Langle suggested her friend Vanessa as Mary before she knew that. Then, she said Vanessa could also pull off Miss Frizzle, so I got Vanessa to audition, and it's just the greatest thing you've ever heard. These performances are immaculate, and I couldn't have gotten them without help from my friends, but I truly think this was the very best possible outcome for the battle's audio. And I think that audio is especially tied together by the beat. I actually bought it from Tone Jones as an alternative to Peabody vs. Talk in case I changed my mind, but it worked very well here. Mind you, the original had a lot of synth, and it was replaced by Leo Barkey, who composed the violin stem that I love so very much. I think the video might be the one aspect that's not among my very best, but I still must commend Skydiving Quagga and Wan for the brilliant Mary Poppins and Miss Frizzle art respectively. I did have a lot of visual ideas for this one and it came together nicely. I also got We Think Company to make some custom backgrounds because I mostly knew what scenes I wanted, including the background. And still, the star of the show is the writing and audio. Everything about these aspects was a turning point for me. This does not have Nuclear Man's video, but I thought it was a big improvement otherwise, and set the precedent for nearly everything that came after it. This battle is important to me, and it's received so much love from all of you. I couldn't be prouder of this one, but number 1 is Azula versus Shaolin Soccer. I'm very firm on this. As of now, I feel like this is the perfect PPRB. It has everything you could want from one of my battles, and I am proud of every aspect. Let's talk about the production. I wrote this right after Larry vs. Poolcheck, so it was done in early December. The plan was to release it on April Fool's Day 2025, like how Nuclear Man was April Fool's Day the year before. The battle did not end up being remotely close to done by then, but some progress had been made. Sandpie recorded for Azula in February, and her performance is phenomenal. She gave a very strong impression, but more importantly nailed the mannerisms and energy of Azula, especially in the aggressive final verse. The grunt before that verse starts was the toughest part to get right, and we actually ended up doing 6 takes of just that one grunt, but it was so worth it. That adorable fox had also recorded her cameo as Ursa, which I feel was a very close match to the original in terms of voice and energy too. Everything else was done after April Fool's Day. Thribbl did the Azula art and background, which is super slick, and that was all done in May and June. The storyboard was completed in April after April Fool's Day, so once I knew what the video would look like, that's when I had Thribbl make the art. And that was also when we got the Shaolin Soccer side done. This was a bit of a doozy. Snakebite126 played the main rapper, named Mighty Steel Leg Sing, and Just Gamer played the coach, Golden Leg Fung. Their voice work is really fun, and it was my first time working with both of them, which I was glad to finally do. The more interesting thing about these two is the body acting. This is my second and as of now latest battle to have live action, and the way this worked out is that Just Gamer, who had been helping me with the casting on the project back when I was still planning for an April Fool's release, told me about his plan to meet Snakebite126 in person in early May, which some of you may know is how they did that Nagito versus Recruiter battle. I'm still extremely grateful they took time out of their meetup to be in my battle, and the call was a lot of fun. I had a lot more action planned compared to Nuclear Man in the storyboard because of the martial arts being a main focus of the movie, so Snakebite filmed a lot of scenes in video form, and I took screenshots from those. Example, the entire first couplet where he eats the roll, swallows, and makes the burn pun is one continuous shot like it would have been in a normal live-action battle. There was some stress in getting this battle done in time, because I only had one day during their meetup that I was available to do the call, and we got lucky with the timing lining up. The crazier thing, though, was the setback with the costume. Sing's gi was not mailed due to a cancellation we weren't made aware of, and with less than 24 hours before the call, we ordered a new one, and I can breathe a sigh of relief knowing it all worked out in the end. The resulting video is definitely my favorite I've done. The bizarre kung fu moves inspired by the legendary Shaolin Soccer are so fun to watch and were equally fun to edit. This all just turned out so nicely. There were some moves that ended up not being feasible, but I'm stoked with what we have anyway. And that coupled with the great punchlines are why Sing Verse 3 is my very favorite I've done. Venue 2 as well, Marital Arts, Practice Drill, and Airbender are all among my favorite lines I've done, and the visuals aid them flawlessly. Fun fact, the final scene with the wall is actually based on a scene from the movie Shaolin Soccer, but the reason I made it the final scene and had the ball go through the wall and Azula is that when I first saw Shaolin Soccer, I thought about how if it was in Smash Bros, that scene would be a perfect final smash. They may not be in Smash Bros, but at least I got to incorporate that idea into my own creative work. I've just been rambling on for the last while, so I'll conclude with this. Of all my battles, this is the only one that truly combined great punchlines, powerful characterization, and a super creative video. This is my favorite writing, favorite audio, and favorite visuals in PPRB so far. And the fact that it resonated with so many people regardless of their familiarity with Shaolin Soccer, which you all should watch by the way, is what I consider my greatest achievement yet. But will I top it in 2026? Maybe. I have a good amount in the works, some things true to what I already know, and some completely out of my comfort zone, but I'm excited to work on all of it and show it to you next year. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ranking. Please comment down below your list, I'd love to see what you think are the 10 best PPRBs, and subscribe so you know when the next great video comes out in 2026. I'll see you next time.